started in the North Calgary office in 1993, 18 years in the business. $2.3 million in career sales. Think about that for a second. $2.3 million in career sales. Vonny loves to travel. Every time I see her, she basically tells me another place she just visited, like Australia, like New Zealand, like Turkey, England, Germany, Spain, Ireland, etc. Needless to say, Vonny never misses a national rep trip. She took the Realtor program by storm and continues to this day to run an efficient and successful Realtor program business. Vonny's average sales the past 5 years are $291,000 and currently is already over $100K for the year 2011. Angie McDougall, DVM in Team Canada, said Vonny is a true champion. She leads with her heart. People are attracted to her sincere and authentic personality. She works harder on herself and her business than anyone else I know. Her success is a reflection of her drive, passion, and desire to grow. I feel honored to call her a friend. Again, from Miss Angie McDougall. Vonny is an absolute icon within Team Canada. When I think of Vonny, I think of someone with passion for the business and a passion for life. Ask anyone who knows Vonny, and they will all tell you the same thing, that Vonny is an ethical, helpful, and all-around amazing person. Some of her accomplishments over the years: Vector Scholarship winner, graduate at the University of Calgary, branch manager, pursued the district manager opportunity but wanted to focus on personal sales, 13 times Academy Award winner, 9 times in a row Standard of Excellence, 5-time Millionaire Club winner, and in 2010 she was the #1 rep in Canada with $359,000 in sales and set the all-time sales record for Canada. She did that by breaking her old record. Please help me welcome, with her talk, Made with Love, Miss Vonny Fast.
Hello, hello.
Hey!
How are you?
Good.
How are you?
Good. I'm shaking a little, but I'm good. So I'm Vonny, obviously, and I sell knives. I'm 36. I'm from Canada.
Woohoo! Nice.
Some of you might have heard of us. We're the colorful country right above you there. And I'm celebrating this month 18 years in the business. Pretty proud of that.
Woo!
So what I thought would be fitting is I'd like to invite you to 1993, if you guys would just come along with me to walk down memory lane. Okay, 18 years ago, picture it. May 93 in Canada. Price of a homemaker is $838. I have long hair and big glasses, very pale. Not all Canadians are pale. I'm very pale. There are no cheese knives and no ultimate sets. The most Jerry Azinger can sell is a homemaker.
That's awesome.
We use payphones and carry rolls of quarters to make calls. I love it. Somebody who's 18 years in the business before us happened over there. We have paper maps. There's no Google, no cell phones. At least I don't have one. There might have been. But if you get lost on the way to a demo, out in the boonies, you're just lost. You just turn around and head back home, or find the nearest payphone, or knock on doors until you find Mrs. Jones. And, that's how I went. I take the bus to all my appointments my entire first year. Cars do exist in Canada in 1993, just so you know. I just personally don't have one yet. So I bus to all my demos, even in -30, which it sometimes gets to in Canada. There are no fairs and shows, so there's no fair and show program. So you can't even seek shelter from this -30. So 18 years and thousands of appointments, that is the only thing that separates me from you. We have a tendency, I find, to separate. I do it. We have a tendency to separate ourselves. I've noticed from people we deem more successful than us, like they've got something we haven't. We also have a tendency to think that people outside of us, or something outside us, people outside of us have our answers. And one thing I've learned in this business, my answers are not your answers. my best teachers have just asked me really great questions. And so I thought today I'd share some questions with you that are powerful for me, that I use in my business and my life, that I continue to use. And I also wanted to take you on a little journey, share 3 things that I feel got me from where I was to where I am today in my business and my life. And through all of it, I want to help set you up to get the most from this message, this conference, this summer. And so here we go. It starts with the question, why am I here? You know, the proverbial why am I here, but really why am I here at this conference? And I know some of you have probably thought about this, and maybe some of you haven't. I've been doing surveys the last, day and a half, or the last day, out there, asking you guys what you came for. You might have come here because somebody told you to come, your manager told you to come, or somebody told you, you gotta go, it's really good. You might have come here because it's sunny. That's what the Canadians were thinking. Just kidding. Maybe you thought it was cool someone from Canada was speaking. Thought, I'd like to hear about Canada and how they sell knives up there. Seriously though. What's important to you? What would make the biggest difference in your business and your life? And what would make this event a 10 out of 10? And I want you to do this for me. Just grab a piece of paper right now. Don't write anything yet. I'm going to get you to speed write in about a minute. But don't write anything yet. So it looks like everybody's got their note paper, which is great. But I'm going to give you some ideas to choose from, or just maybe spark some ideas in your own head. Maybe what would be a 10 for you, you look back on Sunday night, maybe what would make this a 10 is you could guarantee an average of 5 qualified leads per appointment, and you know you can do it. Maybe a 10 for you would be knowing that you could sell 5,000 a week personally, that you actually believe you could do it. You see other people do it, but there's a difference there between seeing other people doing it, knowing it's possible, and knowing it's possible for you. At least I've had that experience. Maybe what's important to you is to increase your business by 25% because of what you learned here about fairs and shows. Maybe the thing that would make the biggest difference for you is like Stan, the man from Wichita, who told me if he met John Ruhlin, this event would be a 10 out of 10 for him. It's pretty cool. Maybe the thing that would make the biggest difference for you is increasing your average order size just a little bit, from 200 to 400, or even really getting your numbers down. What are they? So you know where you need to go. Or maybe it's none of these. Maybe for you it's you sold 200 grand last year, or 150 grand, and you sacrificed some of your personal life to do that in some way that you weren't happy about, so you want to learn more about balance. Or maybe you've hit a ceiling of some sort. And I know there's a lot of first-time attendees, but maybe you've hit a ceiling and you want to take it to the next level and you're not sure what that level is. All of those things. So we're going to hit the music in a second, and I want you to take 45 seconds, pick one question here that stands out. What would make this event a 10 for you? Really, before we do that, this conference, there's going to be 500 different outcomes because there's 500 different people, all with different things that are important to them. And in my experience, this conference is a smorgasbord. It is all here for you. But if you're not clear on what's important to you, how can you get it? Okay? How can you expect to get what you came for if you can't articulate what you came for? So ready, set, hit the music. Some pens going, that's awesome. 10 out of 10. If you look back, I thought that was so worth it. That was high value for me. What'd you get? What would make the biggest difference? I'll give you 10 more seconds. Write it. Don't even think. No right, wrong, good, bad. Just stream of consciousness. All right, stop writing. Stop the music. Stop writing, perfect. So what I want you to do is I want you to circle one thing on that list. The whole list is important, but I want you to pick one thing that really stands out as important to you. Just circle it, highlight, whatever, that'll be your number one focus if you're following my advice. And doesn't mean you eliminate the rest of the list, but once you got that, whether it takes you 20 minutes or 2 days, move on to your next number one focus. So you're not getting a little of a lot of things. Right? That would be my advice on that. Because I don't know if anyone's heard this phrase, what I focus on expands. You know what's important to you, you focus on it, you'll scan for it, you'll see it everywhere. Right? That's been my experience. So I'd love to share with you for the remainder of my message the 3 things that got me from where I was to where I am today. And the first thing, I connected to what I really wanted. Similar to what you just did here, I just did in a different way. So I'm just going to quickly, my mentality when I started, I have to own up, is 1993. My initial goal was to do 40 appointments and get paid $480 minimum pay. That was the pay period in Canada. You had to do 40 appointments before you got paid. I had no intention of selling anything. I didn't like the idea of sales. I thought it was a negative thing. I thought it was pushing people to buy things they didn't want, and that was my attitude starting off. All right? Imagine my surprise my first weekend when I sold a spreader and a pocket knife. I was blown away. I wasn't even trying to sell anything. I actually sold CUTCO in spite of myself. They wanted it. It was a good product. That was my beginning. 2 months later, I agreed to go to a conference. And I will tell you, here I'm all talking about what's important to you, what are your reasons for being here. I will tell you, I'll be honest, that the reason I went to the Toronto conference, I was curious about the conference, but I wanted to fly in a plane. I'd never flown in a plane before. I was from a small town, pretty sheltered, and never, not to say all small town people sheltered, I'm just saying I had never flown in a plane. I was pretty excited about it. And something happened at that conference for me. They called all FSMs, people that had sold CUTCO, quite a bit of CUTCO, to the front of the room, and some of them spoke. And I remember this moment, and I was like, I connected. They had something I wanted, which back then was confidence. It was the be-all and the end-all for me because I just wasn't confident with people. I just was lacking in people and social skills. All I wanted to do was connect with people. But I just wasn't there. I just didn't have that confidence. And so at that conference, I connected with, this business could possibly get me to where I want to grow as a person. And that has always been there, that desire to grow and connect with people and become good with people. And so what's so interesting is by the end of that summer, that first summer with CUTCO, many of you are starting the first summer with CUTCO, I had been working another full-time job, and I'd been doing CUTCO part-time on the bus in and around that job. And at the end of that summer, I was offered a full-time, through university, take it all through my 4 years of university, a contract with the university I was working full-time for, to have a job, paid, steady, everything through school. I would have been covered. And I totally blew myself away by the end of the summer. I did what I would have never thought that I would have done 4 months prior. I declined that opportunity, that full-time position, and chose the path less traveled, and I chose CUTCO. So I maxed out the student FSM opportunity. I ended up doing CUTCO through university. I did it full-time in the summers, part-time around school. Beginning of the following summer, I bought my car, and I made 15 grand the second summer. Worked it part-time around school, around my exams. I opened a branch office a couple times, and graduated from U of C. And then went into management. Things were happening as they should. Then something happened. I went through what has turned out to be, by far, one of the most challenging times in my life. I came out to my family and my friends. I went through a major depression. I resigned from management, and I left the country to escape. And I found, everywhere I go, there I am. I can't outrun me. So here I was, 25 years old. I posted some numbers, posted some successes, straight A's through university, all that. But life had taken a turn I hadn't expected, and I did not know how to deal with it emotionally. So after I got back from traveling, I went back to selling. And actually, no one did that back in 1993, 18 years ago. It just was unheard of. I remember looking at the phone for a very long time, feeling really alone. I'd gone through all this personal stuff in a short period of time. I felt like a totally different person. And in that moment, I really had to pick myself up off the emotional floor and the financial floor. And there was nowhere else to go or run, so I made a phone call. I made one call. I showed up. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't fancy. I just showed up. It was one foot in front of the other. And then I went to work. And you know, it's interesting. People go through personal stuff all the time and they go to work. It doesn't make it easy. It's like labor, you know? I mean, I've never gone through labor, but not easy, but people do it. And it was tempting, I tell you, to change jobs at that time. I thought about it because I thought about going to another job where I could just go and check out and not have to put some heart into it and think about it. But there was part of me that knew that if I changed jobs, if I changed what I was doing, I would just bring the same me over there. Everywhere I go, there I am. It wasn't the job, so instead of changing what I was doing, I changed how I was doing it. I opened up. I opened up to new ways of doing things. I became, number one, a woman of action. I used to dread the phone. I don't know if anyone can relate. Awesome. Love it. I used to think about the phone well before getting on it. I don't know if anyone has had that experience, but it's interesting when you're open for things and you start scanning. John Burghoff was giving a message, and he said this one thing. I just was like, that's so cool, I'm gonna try it. If you're thinking about it, you must have time to do it. I was like, brilliant. So every time I thought about the phone, when it was appropriate to do so, I picked up the phone and made a call. So I started to condition myself. Hal Elrod said, become a master at taking first steps towards your goal. So I started chunking things down. I started putting on my workout gear before I was going to go work out, or I would organize my leads and lay them out and kind of look through them, not as a procrastination thing, but just as a step towards getting on the phone, stuff like that. I became a master at first steps, tiny baby steps. How many of you have ever made one call when you're not motivated, and the momentum, there's something there that takes you and you start moving? Yeah, I see a lot of hands. So, you know, it has been my experience that action brings motivation. The question I get asked most often, I quoted myself there, motivation to work out comes to those who get on the treadmill. So the number one question I get asked is, how do you stay motivated? Short answer, I don't. Can you guys imagine, absolutely unrealistic to think I've been motivated to go to work every day in 18 years. I think, what if everyone else in the world only went to work when they were motivated or happy? That would be very odd, but people go to work, and I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves with that question. Almost inherent in that question is asking, how do I stay motivated so I can act? And I believe the better question is, how do I just act so I can get motivated? It's a shift in thinking. So speaking of powerful questions, try this one on. Who can I get to hold me accountable when I need it? Who can I get to hold me accountable when I need it? How do I condition myself to act on what's important to me regardless of my mood? It's been huge for me. Now, I said my answers are not your answers. I will give you one answer, okay? It's a formula. It worked so well for me, I just have to share it. 20 calls a day. This number could be 40 for you, could be 60, could be 10. Doesn't matter. But Hal Elrod spoke about this one day, probably at a conference at an RDC. And I adopted this habit. I made 20 calls a day, and the cool thing about it was I didn't attach myself to any outcome. I just celebrated when I made the calls. Regardless, yes, no, not home, celebrated, and at the end of 20, if I felt like keeping going, I would, but I was successful if I made 20 calls. So what's cool, that was totally in my control, and I created a habit of doing things regardless of how I felt and what the outcome was. So I still, to this day, people ask me how I work. I just commit to activity that falls within my ideal schedule. I book my schedule, I commit to the activity that I can control. Sometimes I don't even know my numbers till the end of the week. I'm mindful of my long-term goals, my campaign goals, but I'm committed to the activity. The other thing I shifted around that time when I was coming out of my slump was I changed the way I dealt with emotion. How many of you watch How I Met Your Mother? Woo! Excellent. I'm not that well acquainted with Barney, but I know him a little bit. And, I watched a little bit of the show, and I saw this poster, and I loved it. It says awesomeness, and you can't read the bottom, but it says, when I'm sad, I just stop being sad and be awesome instead. True story. And if any of you are writing that down, I will tell you, Barney is not my emotional mentor, and I'll explain. I'd always tried to be positive in sales. I created a story that you gotta be on, you gotta be positive. Trust me, I love positivity. But what happened was I didn't allow myself to express negative emotions like sadness or fear or anger, nervous stuff that we label negative. And I learned you stunt any emotion, it'll catch up with you. You know, it's kind of like if your emotions are a hose and you clamp that, you stop it, it's going to seep out somewhere. And there are people that say that I've learned, you cut off negative emotions, negative emotions, you don't allow yourself to feel anger, sadness, sorrow, grief, those things, you inhibit an ability to experience love and joy and all those things. So now I express emotion in appropriate places. I feel it, I honor it, and then I'm able to move forward. So my version, when I'm sad, I just get sad. And that's awesome. True story. So shifting those two things, how I dealt, sounds like you guys like Barney's version better. Shifting those two things, how I dealt with emotions and learning to act, I moved out of the slump. And there was no record-breaking year there, but I learned a whole way of expressing with my clients and my people in my life. I want you to do this. I want you to look at your number one focus right now. And just ask yourself, am I open to a new way of doing things? And I want you to answer this. What or who could I open up to at this event that would be a stretch for me? And I want you to actually take a few seconds and write down 1 or 2 action steps. You know, Stan the man's got it all going on already. He's going to meet John Ruhlin. But what are you going to do that's going to get you closer to your number one focus? You know, whether it's grab Andy Jonty and talk to him about how he builds relationships, or Evelyn Comer about, you know, marketing and past client retention, or, you know, anyone, Adam Sobieski, how he still manages to have such a great lifestyle around being number one. All right? Just write down one action step right now, or 2, that you can control. Because this is your conference for sure. So I said there were 3 things that got me from where I was to where I am today. And the final thing was, I made it mine. So after coming out of that slump and shifting how I was doing things for the next 2 years, I just traveled around the world. I sold knives for about 9-10 months of the year. I made about $50,000 to $100,000 a year selling knives, 10 months of the year, traveling the rest of the time. It was awesome. It was great. I remember saving $50,000 in a year and just wondering what to do with it. True story. I volunteered, did writing courses. It was great. And I remember, though, right around the age of 28, 29, right before I hit 30, I started to question it all and thinking, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be 30 and still selling knives. I have a car, at least, you know, busting around with the sample kit, but, you know, I kind of started to think about that. I'm like, do I want that? And you might be doing a version of that. You know, all my friends are all getting hourly paychecks, or all my, you know, my family or my friends, they sort of don't get this, or whatever. It might be, do I want that? Whatever the questioning might be. So try being 28 and after you got a degree and you go to your client's house, your clients, your own clients that you've been servicing for 10 years, and they love you and you love them, and they do this, they go, so you're still doing this? Yeah, that's why I'm at your door. You know, they couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that I would actually continue to choose to run my business over some corporate job. Or the best was, and I know some of you are going to relate to this, in a demo, the best was finishing the demo, and at the end they go, you're writing up the order or whatever, and they go, so what do you do? It's like, this is what I do, and I did, right here. So, all that coming back at me was interesting. I almost started to feel like I should be doing something else. After all, I had a degree, and I was going to be 30. Then I heard Aaliyah Alopoulos talk on professional selling, and I came to conferences like this, and I met people that had 3 kids, and they were selling CUTCO, and had 3 properties, and they were selling CUTCO, and they were climbing mountains, and they were selling CUTCO, Carl Drew. So I began to shift from seeing it as this cool traveling, so a student opportunity, cool traveling knife selling thing, making good money. Well, shifted from the traveling 50% knife thing, while I'm trying to figure out what else I'm going to do, to this is mine. This is my business. I began to embrace it fully for everything it could be for me. What's cool is a client last week, I was doing a service call, she goes, "So you make a living at this, hey?" But they ask it in such a great way now. They're in awe. They're in complete awe. And I just said, "More than a living, Lorna." The other client last week, or a couple of weeks ago, she goes, "So what made you decide to stick with this thing after all these years?" And I just wanted to invite her to the presentation here, have her watch. But what's so cool is they're blown away. They love it. And my answer to that question, I get to do all these cool things. That's my dream wall, part of my dream wall. I get to do all the things I love. So that's me at a music festival. I get to take time for the important people in my life, my friends, my family, relationships. I get to travel. You know what's cool? I dream it, I book it, I go. I don't have to ask anybody. Well, I ask myself for time off. I just go, "Vonny, do you want 2 months off to go travel?" And then I go, "Yes." I'm a wicked boss, so.
That is awesome.
Costa Rica. I bought a condo about 7 years ago, paid it off last year, completely paid off. So I have no mortgage there. Yeah, I rent it out. I'm now a property manager. I rent it out to my friend, and I just bought another condo. And last year I paid the $30,000 maximum allowable mortgage. You know, they penalize you if you pay more. So I couldn't pay more off my mortgage on that one. But that was pretty cool. I get to be engaged and challenged. I need it. I need it. I don't like to be bored. This is pre-push week. This is post-push week. And Curtis beat me, as per usual. And Jason. I have 3 assistants now. I just ran my first staff meeting about a month ago. It's pretty cool. Yeah. This is Amy, my good friend and my assistant. She's helping me write up $30,000 worth of orders in 2 days last summer. I have 3,500 clients on my database. I get to give back. This is a letter from U of C students, marketing students, actually business students, thanking me for coming in to teach them about business-to-business marketing. They actually sell CUTCO for their university class, so I just do a portion of teaching them about business-to-business marketing. And many of the proceeds, they get credit for selling CUTCO, and many of the proceeds go to charity. It's really cool. So 10 years, 12 years later, I'm going back into the classroom I sat in teaching these kids. Like, look at me calling them kids. I'm calling them kids. I have gray hair. It's happening. So this is after a half marathon our CUTCO team did. We ran to support the Front Row Foundation. Talked to John Broman about that. And this is me eating cake. That's all. That's the reason I put that up there. Has anyone seen Ace of Cakes, Charms of Cake? You know those cake shows? I do really like those shows. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do like the cake shows. And one of my friends' friends makes amazing cakes locally in our town. And you can Google her if you want. But she wrote a quote on her website next to all these amazing cakes. I realize every day that it's about so much more than just cake. Cake is a representation of gratitude, of thankfulness. And that sums up how I feel about my business. It's so much more than just knives. I'm grateful for it, I celebrate it, I get mad, I get disappointed, I get joyful, I learn, and I love it. Just like any great relationship. So I connected to something I wanted that the business could give me. I stayed open to the lessons and open to new ways of doing things. And along the way, I took full ownership and I made it mine. And now I took a full bite, basically, and now I can taste it. And until you dig in, you'll never really know. So my thought for you is this conference this summer, Go Connect, open up and make it yours. Thank you.